The Point After Show.
He's going savage.
Run for your life!
And that was a disgraceful performance, in my opinion. We threw that game. We gave it away by doing that. We gave them the friggin' game. In my opinion, that sucked. Playoffs? What talk about? Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
The Point After Show.
I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the he wants.
The Point After Show.
Spikes in hell. Spikes in pee-wee hell.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to week 2 of the Point After Show 2.0. We're back and ready to roll. Week 1 of fantasy football's in the books, and we're here to talk a little smack before we get started on what's going to happen forward in fantasy leagues. It was a tough week for two of our co-hosts here, the FF Advantage and Cavi. Unbelievable matchup of the misfits we had this week. I didn't know who was going to pull out the win, but all was able to do it. I was kind of sad. I wanted Cavi to win. What did you think, Cavi? Did you think you had that at any point in time?
When Alvin Kamara scored that touchdown they took away from him, I thought I had it. And then at one point in right around halftime, I thought there was a chance because my percentage was up to 42, so I thought I had a chance. And then once Ben threw that second touchdown, I knew it was over.
And that was a Monday night drama for sure between these two. Losing sleep week 1. Obviously with Cavi having that big bet with Arnice. 10th place or better, I think it is, Cav. Is that what it is for $150?
I'm still fine with that. I'll be all right.
Obviously you guys saw what I did this week. I did the little sneak attack when Rivera sent me a private message. I sent it out to our group chat, letting everybody know that Rivera was behind the scenes talking a little smack, saying Arnice is going to win it all. Smoke, let me get to you. What did you think about the matchup this week?
I thought we had a bad week, Cavi and I. I'm very fortunate that Cavi had the worst week of all of us, and I had the second worst week. So, slightly disappointed in my team, but I'm not panicking. That is the motto of week 1: is don't panic. So I think we'll talk more about it today.
So I think the biggest part that I could take away from it is that I get with the rule change, I get waiver wire priority, so that kind of helps a little bit. Not that there's a lot out there, but
which I'm not a big fan of. But also with waiver wire priority came with Venmo priority, and you had to send on $20 to James M, who had the high score in our league this week. And again, I've been talking about this the last couple of days. I think this guy has a team that is destined for a championship. I know Paul's going to razz me a little bit and say I have a little James love in my heart, but I think that his team is stacked and to the gills with talent, and it's going to be tough to beat. E-Dog, what are you on my side on this, or are you going to go with Paulie thinking I have a man crush on James M?
Well, I played James M this week, and he kicked my ass in. I thought I had a chance for a while there, but, if I played 8 other teams, I would have won this week, but I had to face his team. He put up over 200 points. What are you going to do? You have those weeks where, the cookie crumbled, not in my direction. And I would have played – I would have beat both Cavi and Paul's teams by 100 points if I played them, but I didn't. So
well, Ed, you're talking major leagues to single A baseball squads there when you're talking about your team and those two bums.
Hey, listen, here's what I'll tell you guys. At the end of the day, much like Jared Goff, I'm 1-0. I don't have to – it doesn't have to be pretty. Right, I'm 1-0. Eddie, are you 1-0?
No, I'm 0-1.
Cavi,
I'm not saying anything. I got no trash to talk.
So I have the same record as you, T. It doesn't make a difference how bad my team looked. And going back to the whole James M, I know you have a man crush on him, and every year you think he's always got a stacked team, and he is the Sammy Watkins of our league. It's week 1. We'll talk about that later too.
I like that. I love how, Paul, everything's talk later, like winning a fantasy championship.
Well,
but unfortunately for you, later never comes, buddy.
We got a lot
later
to talk
never
about
comes
on the show tonight, so
Yeah, obviously. So what we're going to, like I said earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about our league. I know Paul's trying to rush us through to get to his segment of risers and fallers, but we'll get to that in a little bit. we just want to talk about some things that happened week one. Whether or not it was in our league, it doesn't matter. It's relevant to all fantasy players out there. You talk about some big-time players. You know, you had your Devontae Adams. Thank you very much. You also had guys like Calvin Ridley putting up big numbers. You had Julio Jones. Matty Ice out there had 300-yard receivers, which is unbelievable for the Falcons. You know, obviously goes back to Rivera and his huge I'd like to call it a waiver wire pickup after our knee drop, but it was a free agent pickup. Matty Ice, he scooped up. So he has the stack of Calvin Ridley and Matty Ice. What are some other takeaways from this week of the league? Smoke, what do you think? Who do you have looking good right now in our league?
On my team personally, or what are my thoughts?
Yeah, the league and your team.
So, I really don't have a whole lot to talk about on my team right now. I'm still happy with my draft. I'm still obviously, again, it's week one. Takeaways from this week is it's week one. Don't panic. But I will say this: there's a couple backfields that I think we've gotten more questions than answers on in the NFL, and I think I'd like to stay away from them. Backfields like the Washington Redskins, backfields like the Los Angeles
Jets.
The Rams, the Jets, like there's a lot of, and here's
Detroit Lions.
I'll say real quick, and I'll pass off to somebody else. But like, it's week one, and we might as well get ready for this ride of injuries with no off season and realistically no preseason, no OTAs. Like hamstrings, people are getting hurt. IR is going to be busy this year, so it's going to be a wild ride. I think it's going to be fun to see who's the champion of this, who can survive this tornado of injuries this year.
Eddie, Paulie had a good point that waiver wires are going to be busy this year. What do you think will be busier, waiver wires or Paulie's Bumble?
That's a toss-up. Maybe is there a grinder? Is that still a thing? No.
Well, I think he got himself off that, but yeah, I think he's just on the Bumble now.
All right.
But again, I'm with you. That's a toss-up.
But our waiver wire, if anyone doesn't know out there that's listening, our waiver wire, we have it set at a 50 transaction cap, but then you have to pay $5 for every transaction after that. So it could be a hefty pot after all is said and done if there's a lot of injuries and a lot of, especially like with no OTAs and no preseason, like Paulie was mentioned. There's going to be a lot of even soft tissue injuries that are season ending. Like there's going to be a lot of injuries, I think, that we haven't seen in the past. It's those, you have to get lucky workhorses. Like I almost have to say that like a workhorse like Derrick Henry might be one of, I know he's, Golden Toe's main pick this year, but I think he's prone to an injury this year, I think, because he hasn't had, he had 31 carries. Like that's insane, I think, for week one without a preseason. I don't know if he'll last, but he might because he's a beast. But I'm just saying, like that type of workhorse, I think that teams are using these multi-back setups early on, especially to get their teams inclined and, kind of more just the better way to ease into the season than previous years.
Yeah, I agree. And speaking of soft tissue injuries, I had a chance of beating Sox this week. Which was a great win for myself and to give myself a 1-0 record going into the season. But, he has a pretty solid team, which I'm not worried about too much, just like the rest of you bums on this thread. Cav, what are your takeaways from week one?
My team sucks. But aside from that, I think you're going to see a lot of players that were held out a little bit. Like we said, it's like it's like a preseason game, basically, week one, right? You didn't have a preseason. So you're going to see some people that are rusty, especially players that didn't get a lot of work in the offseason. I think my team especially had some of that. Alvin Kamara held out for a while, so they limited him. You're not going to see Latavius Murray out-touch him like that all season, especially after the money they just gave him. Mike Evans on my team as well. Was a game time decision. They put him in. Bruce Arians said it's disgusting. He didn't even get 10 targets. So he'll trend up. I think Brady will get sharper. And I think there's a bunch of players on my team, unfortunately. It happened with Deshaun Jackson. They didn't announce till after the game that they're limiting his snaps right now. So hopefully my team comes alive a little bit here and gets full reps. But I think that's probably across the league. There's a lot of players like that.
How did you guys fare in all your other leagues? I know I'm in another league with Paul. I think he's lost every single fantasy matchup he had last week. Eddie, how's the family league going? How'd you fare this week?
I think we came. I mean, it's a total points league. It's not head to head.
Okay.
But I think we finished in like 5th or 6th place, something like that. So like, there's 14 teams in it. So
nice.
Towards the top.
Cav, how'd you make out this week? You in any other fantasy leagues this year?
Yeah, so I'm in my work league, and my draft was Thursday night while I was hosting a music award show. So I don't know who's on my team or what points you score because I still didn't look at it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I said it. I said a draft order, but I'm sure I just got
it was
a bunch of crap.
Yeah, it was kind of like the year, when the podcast was kicking off and up and running strong. I think you were in about 14 fantasy leagues that year, something crazy.
I was in a lot. Just 2 this year, though. Just 2.
So real quick, guys, I just wanted to. I'm just sitting here and I've been kind of looking and scrolling through things, and I thought this was pretty interesting. And it's just kind of just proof about week 1, and realistically, it's proof that the theory about quarterbacks and tight ends somewhat being much of a streamer position. They're pretty deep. You can kind of go with whatever. So quarterbacks, for the top 12 quarterbacks in the league this year, for week 1, top 12 quarterbacks, which would be a quarterback 1 in a 12-man league, there was 6 that weren't even owned by less than 50% of people. In tight ends, there was 4 that were owned by less than 50% of people. But running backs, here's crazy, right? Of the running backs that were drafted in the first round, 6 running backs finished in the top 12. So that's a good sign. That means those first round running backs that everybody probably went heavy on, they didn't really disappoint unless you had Saquon. But they really didn't disappoint you too badly. First round running backs did pretty well this week. So just food for thought.
So I'm glad you kind of kicked it off. That'll be a nice segue into our next conversation piece here is one thing that we want to talk about tonight are rising, falling, and trading. This is something that I think is important. Week 1, it's kind of not, one of the times you need to focus on this. Maybe like week 2, 3, 4 is when you start getting in that panic zone. Or, it also can be at that point in time, it could be too late to get some of those people that are rising and some of those people that you want to trade for. But let's get into the rising stocks, people that are owned in 50% of the leagues this year. So, Smoke, let me start with you. Who do you have as a rising star that you might, want to look at, whether it's off of somebody in a deeper league that you might want to trade for, or, one of those shorter end leagues where it's not so many people on rosters that you're going to try to go and get off the waiver wire this week? Yeah.
So as you mentioned, our rising stocks are, players that we find that are owned in less than 50% of leagues. So, my rising star is Malcolm Brown. As a Cam Akers owner, Malcolm Brown was a huge thorn in my side this week. And quite honestly, it's a couple things. One, he pretty much split carries with Cam Akers all the way through. He actually ended up with more carries overall by about 4. More yardage, so he was much more proficient on the ground than Cam Akers was, even though Cam Akers technically got the start. But also the more scary thing is that Malcolm Brown got the red zone, the inside the 5-yard line touches, and he cashed in on him. So he cashed in twice inside the 5-yard line where Cam Akers wasn't really getting those touches. And for me, I get it. There's a lot of people out there that are like Malcolm Brown haters that say, oh, it's, he did this again last year. He was up and down and up and down. He started off hot and then he finished the season. I think Malcolm Brown is the real deal. I watched a lot of game film on him today and I watched it back. Very explosive. And the only scary thought I would have on Malcolm Brown is he really didn't see, he still has to mix in with Cam and he still has to mix in with Darrell Henderson. But he was in there on passing downs, which is a good sign. He had 4 targets. For me, I'm buying on Malcolm Brown right now. He's a rising star for me. So that's me.
Ed, what do you think about Malcolm Brown as a rising star? You think it's something to watch for? Do you think this is a situation where it was week 1, like you spoke about earlier, is that they're trying to break in the running backs and kind of do a running back by committee with the lack of preseason? So they're, spreading out the love. Do you think Malcolm Brown's going to be the man, or do you think this is something where Cam Akers is eventually going to be the workhorse?
I guess I don't know. I think it'll be it might be who has the hot hand for a while and just kind of run with it, because I know they have Darrell Henderson and they have Cam Akers, and there's a lot of talent in that backfield. I think they're just gonna see who's gonna rise out of those three guys, and I think eventually it'll probably be Cam Akers, but who knows if that'll be next week or in 5 weeks from now.
Yeah,
I don't know. But I want to talk about another rookie that I know there was Cam Akers, there was Swift, there was Dobbins. They all had decent weeks this week. But I think my rising candidate is going to be Joshua Kelly from the Chargers. I don't see Eckler as a workhorse back. I never really did. Like, he was a good backup for Melvin Gordon when Melvin Gordon was hurt for a few games here or there. But Joshua Kelly looked great. He had 12 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, it was week 1. Eckler, I didn't think he looked that great. I think he caught one pass. He's usually, catching multiple out of the backfield for PPR leagues. I don't know. He just looked good and looked better than Eckler when he was given those opportunities. And then he obviously scored a touchdown. So I see Joshua Kelly possibly, even the coach said that they don't think they would have won this week if Joshua Kelly wasn't on the field. So I think that gives Kelly and owners hope that he'll probably get more opportunities going forward. So that's why.
Do you think this would be more of a going forward, kind of like a timeshare like they had with Melvin Gordon and Austin Eckler in seasons prior? Or do you think Joshua Kelly is going to end up taking the lead back role and Austin Eckler is going to submit back to, your catch back and catch a run here and there?
I don't know. I think it'll be, maybe probably 60-40 for a while, because Eckler still got 19 carries, I think, and to Joshua Kelly's 12. So, I mean, maybe it'll even out at some point. I don't know if Eckler will still be the pass catcher, like you said, with Melvin Gordon and Joshua Kelly taking over that role or not. But I do think it'll even out if Joshua Kelly keeps on performing, and I think he will, because he looked good.
And, I'll throw some kudos out to Rivera. This guy was on Rivera's radar during draft and prior to draft. He was talking about him a ton. Loved him coming into camp. Even though he also had Austin Eckler, he went and drafted Joshua Kelly. So I'll give Rivera some kudos where it's deserved. Cav, looking at the spreadsheet here, when we put this together today, threw out the reminder, to fill it out, and I saw your stock rising candidate. I had a couple questions. So convince me why your rising star should be on this list.
Yeah, I didn't read the directions. He's definitely owned in more than 50% of leagues, but I do think his stock is rising. Austin Hooper. So, number one, they just paid him big. They paid him $44 million over 3 years. And Njoku just went down. He's done. So he's on the IR. And they ran a 3 tight end package in 60% of their snaps last week. And the coach is just known for liking to throw the ball to tight ends. It's a tight end heavy offense. So now you take out your number one pass catching tight end, and Hooper, who's already a proven talent at catching the ball, and just I think he could be a top 5 tight end by the end of the year.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think a lot of that relies on Baker Mayfield and what he could pull out. A lot of people are coming out this week after another lackluster performance saying that, they said he needed some time, but unfortunately he had time, and he's not moving up to the standards that, obviously a number 1 draft pick should be performing to. But, I can't disagree. When he played for Atlanta, he was a stud too. But
I also think that your tight end can be your safety blanket, so if he's not able to get it downfield a lot and he's able to just kind of rely on Hooper for those little dinks and dunks, it could end up being good for him, and it could end up being good if they ever see the red zone in Cleveland. It could be a nice little dump off for him.
Nice. Yeah. So, I'll do my stock rising, right? And then when we segue into stock falling, it's going to be a combo package, obviously. So my stock rising, obviously, is Benny Snell from the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you can't tell, I'm a big fan of the Steelers back here. But, you look what he did last night. He had 19 carries for 113 yards. I know he almost had that costly fumble there later in the game. But, thankfully it was recovered by the Steelers. They were able to punch one in on that drive. I think Benny Snell looks good. He had a burst of speed. He had those cuts that they're looking for. I think he might be the guy in Pittsburgh going forward. You spoke to me on draft day. I thought Benny Snell was going to be an afterthought. I thought it was going to be Connor until he had his injury bug. And then Anthony McFarland, the rookie from Maryland, was going to be the guy. But Benny Snell looked beast last night. He looked good last year in his carries that he had. But going forward, I think that, obviously with the Steelers tackle going out probably for the rest of the season with the torn Achilles, I think that's going to hurt him a little bit. But anybody in that backfield obviously will have some problems. But Benny Snell is the guy I'm definitely going with moving forward. So obviously, I said I do the combo package here. And my faller is James Conner, right? Paul, you said this in the text thread earlier today and last night that he just looks slow. He's dinged up again. I think it's the last year on his contract. I think the Steelers are looking for somebody that's going to be reliable, one of those guys that smash mouth football like Benny Snell, and James Conner obviously isn't that. He gets hit. Last night he had 6 carries for 9 yards, 2 catches for 8. It's just, Steelers were that kind of, ever since Fast Willie Parker, they were that kind of guy that needed somebody that could run the ball and catch the ball out of the backfield. And unfortunately for James Conner, which is a guy I love his story, but I think, his name and days are numbered here in Pittsburgh. What do you think about that, Smoke?
So I 100% agree with you on James Conner. I think that James Conner, unfortunately, story's great. And I love the guy personally, as he's just a great overall dude, but he just can't stay healthy. I will back up a little bit with Benny Snell. Obviously, Benny Snell is probably one of the top 5 waiver wire picks right now. A lot of people are after him. My concern with Benny Snell is this: if you watch the game, every third down they took him out, put Jalen Samuels in, and that's scary. He didn't catch a single ball, didn't get a single target. They just don't trust him in the pass.
Yeah, he had one target.
Did he have one? Okay.
Yep.
So I felt like every time I looked at him, they took him out of the game for third downs, and they had Samuel in. James Conner, it's going to be intermittent. They're going to continue to keep giving him a chance. They did say today, I listened to Tomlin, they said they're going to keep the light on for him. So apparently Conner's like Motel 8. I don't know. Here's my thing. I want to stay as far away from this backfield as I possibly can. I love the high-powered offense, and there's a lot of things that are good in this offense, but I don't want the headache every single week of like wondering, is Benny Snell going to get the start? Is he not going to get the start? Is Conner going to come in? Is he going to get hurt? Is he going to put Snell in? I'm 100% agree with you. James Conner, I'm panicking on him quickly. And I'm glad I didn't draft him in any draft at all. But Benny Snell, I mean, listen, I'm going to go and get him. I'm going to try to get him. I'm going to put some fab, some waiver wire money in for him, see if I get him. But, he's a little bit of a scare for me. There's other people in front of him.
Yeah, so my only thing with Conner, right, is I was going to try to snag him up in the 3rd round till Chach scooped him up. You look at his numbers last year before he got hurt, he was on average for like 1,400 yards and 8 touchdowns. So he was, again, it's injury.
What was the size of the what are we talking about there? Like, how many games did he play last year before that, during
I'm just saying he was, I think six or so.
So, I mean, I don't know. That offense was just a disaster last year, but I mean, he was a bright spot for a little bit, but I said it from the jump, like James Conner just can't stay healthy. He is, I'll be honest to say this, as a Steeler fan, I wish to God we would go and get Lev Bell back. I know that'll never happen, but I would love to get Lev Bell back.
Yeah, I'm with you. Amen. But the only thing I'll rebut with the Benny Snell comments that you had is, 3rd down, they brought in Jalen Samuels. You look at Jalen Samuels has had a lot of work there historically with the Steelers, especially last year after, Connor went down. But what I'll say is you have to look and think about Benny Snell wasn't getting a ton of first-team reps here in the offseason, right? So he's probably not accustomed to catching the ball out of the backfield. So, that's what I'll say about Benny Snell. I think obviously now that he's going to be the starter, at least until Connor's healthy, they're going to work with them every week. So, Cav, what do you think? Who do you have as your stock falling guy?
I have Mark Ingram, and I think it's not looking good. Ingram's hitting 30, which is kind of like when the running backs start to fall off, but he didn't even get a chance this week. I mean, he only got 10 carries, measly 29 yards, and the big thing that made Mark Ingram valuable last year is he was getting those red zone touches, and he was scoring all the touchdowns, and you were, at the very least, even though he would run the ball more, but you're getting those scumbag touchdowns if he didn't get the big share that week. But J.K. Dobbins he's even stealing the red zone. He had two touchdowns from inside the red zone. If Ingram's not getting that, he's worthless basically at this point. He's an aging running back that is in the twilight of his career, and there's a 3 running back committee. It looks like everybody got 32% this week, so it's not looking good for him in Baltimore.
Who got the other 4%?
I don't know. I'm not good at math. 33.25.
No, I agree, right? And I think everybody kind of had that same kind of a feeling going into the season is that J.K. Dobbins would end up working his way into the main role there in Baltimore, if not main role, 60-40 at least. But like you said, the biggest thing that hurt Mark Ingram this week was the red zone touches, right? J.K. Dobbins, I don't know if it was to try to build up confidence in the guy, but, he scored the 2 touchdowns there for Baltimore, which, like you said, hurts the Ingram owners. E-Dog, who do you have as a faller this week?
The number 2 overall pick consensus-wise, Saquon Barkley.
I love it.
That was – if I was a Saquon owner, I would be very, very nervous and scared after watching that game last night against the Steelers. I don't even know what to say. I think he had 7 carries for -6 yards at one point, and that was not just like in the first quarter. Like it was further along in the game than one would like to see those stats. I just think that Giants O-line is so awful. Like just seeing him get pummeled so many times in the backfield, and I don't know. I'd be nervous. And I know the Steelers have a pretty decent run defense, but at the same time, I don't know. I'd be very, very scared that he's my number 2, actually a lot of people's number 1 pick, but number 2 overall pick, just to see that first initial performance when you have a slew of other, high fantasy, ADP guys that, you could have picked have big games this week. It's not a good start. And, your team is probably you're probably a lot lower on your team than you would be normally if you probably picked a Dalvin Cook even, or Henry, even though he didn't score a touchdown, he's still at 115 yards rushing. Anything better than I forget what he had. 15 for 6 yards, 6 rushing yards. I know he had 60 receiving yards on 6 catches. So if you're in a PPR league, not too horrible, but for a number 2 overall pick, that's not good. That's not going to cut it. You want consistency, and you want the Christian McCaffrey numbers of, 18 to 25 points a week. Like that's what you're counting on, and you're not getting that behind that O-line of New York, I don't think.
He's the gift that keeps on giving for me in that trade when I got rid of him last year.
Yeah. And you saw Lawyer Pete, the AKA the Green Bay Packers owner, was texting out today that he's worried about him. He is saying his season and his schedule is falling apart as we speak. But no, Ed, I agree 100% with that sentiment about him being a faller for sure. Smoke, who do you have as your faller this week for fantasy football?
So my falling stock this week is DJ Moore, and it's not because I'm
DJ Moore. DJ Moore? Who drafted him in our league?
I did. Yep.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So here's the thing. So I'm not down on DJ Moore because I think that he doesn't have the capabilities of being an elite fantasy player or a quality fantasy player. He had 9 targets this week, which you can't ask for a lot more than that with your a wide receiver on your team. The concern I have about DJ Moore is twofold. One, where he was drafted this year. He was drafted, back in the second round, third round, whatever. He's being drafted as a wide receiver 1. I drafted him as a wide receiver 1. Last year, he had really, really good numbers. Flew heavily under the radar, but his numbers were phenomenal. Over 1,100 yards receiving. But the change of quarterback scares the hell out of me. I tweeted out yesterday during the game, I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is a good quarterback. You look at Teddy Bridgewater, he's never thrown for more than 9 touchdowns in an entire season. And he's played entire seasons, right? He's played an entire full season when he was in Minnesota, and he's never thrown for big touchdown type guys. But his accuracy is iffy at best. DJ Moore is in a tough division. You have guys like Lattimore and you have a lot of tough defensive backs in that division. And DJ Moore has the ability to be a great receiver, but he needs to get targets. He needs to just be force-fed, which I think happened last year when, even though he had an inefficient quarterback last year, he was force-fed. And I just don't think Teddy Bridgewater is willing to take those risks. He doesn't want to take the risk he throws. So he's more inclined to check it down to McCaffrey, or he'll go to, which is my other concern, Robbie Anderson, who looked really, really good for the Carolina Panthers this week. So the addition of Robbie Anderson now makes me even more concerned that DJ Moore doesn't end up a wide receiver 1 this year. And he was drafted to be that way. So I'm very, very concerned about DJ Moore. I'm dropping him down. If he finishes in the top 24, I think that's feasible, but the top 12 would be a lot. We'll see. Try not to panic on him.
I'm panicking for him and all your DJs on your team because I think DJ Chark is also bad. But hey, you drafted them, not me, brother.
DJ Chark is fine.
So, obviously I did my stock falling with James Conner. So let's talk about a position or player that you would trade for or away this week after. And again, we know it's week 1. I know some people like Paul and Cavi putting up, a measly 90-some fantasy points. They're looking to trade away their entire team, their entire roster. I'm surprised Paul didn't just have stock falling his team. But unfortunately, we limited it to 1 player, thankfully, because we'd be here for an hour listening to him talk. So let me ask Cavi, who is somebody that you're looking at this week that somebody may have drafted that you'd either trade for or trade away if they're already on your squad?
I actually think Eddie would be best to start this segment. I was pretty interested by his. I think it would be more interesting.
I was going to segue into that one.
Okay. So I'm going with Jonnu Smith. Big fan of this guy.
Johnny Smith?
Jonnu.
Cavi loves the tight ends.
I do love tight ends, but here's the thing is that I think a lot of tight ends looked really bad.
To make them wide receivers.
What's that?
You love those tight ends. Try to make them wide receivers.
Yeah, exactly. But I think a lot of tight end this year in general was kind of an iffy position for a lot of people. It was tough to nail anything down. I was reading a lot about him last night. He had an okay season last season, his rookie year. But I think that the system he's in is going to play for him, and I think he's kind of a safety blanket, and he proved it last night. I mean, he had 7 targets as a tight end. He caught 4 of them for 60 yards, and they were even using them. They were running like tight end screens and stuff with him, and he's really good with the ball after he catches it. He's evasive. He's really fast. He's kind of he's not really a big blocking tight end. He's more of a fat wide receiver, to put it, lightly. So
he's like the Eddie Lacy of wide receivers.
Yeah, I think yes, exactly. I think you could see him again being a top 10, if not top 8 tight end by the end of the year in that system. So I really, if you're really struggling and he's not a name that was floating to the top of anybody's board. I picked him up last night before kickoff so I could get him without using a waiver. After I couldn't play a tight end, but I picked him up real quick to stash him. So he's on my bench, and hopefully I can use him for some trade bait for somebody that needs him.
Yeah, no, I like the pick, and I like your bias too because you went and picked him up last night, so he was going to be your guy to trade for. Try to sell it tonight pretty hard to all the listeners. Come get some. But Eddie, if you were looking for somebody on your squad, and I know your team didn't do that bad this week, obviously with the two other cats on this podcast tonight, but who would you trade for or try to trade away if you were looking for somebody? If you were desperate, Ed.
If I was desperate, like if I were you with your team, I don't know. Definitely a running back. But no, I don't trade. I'm not a trader. I'm no Benedict Arnold.
In fantasy football, maybe.
Oh, okay.
What about a Trader Joe?
No, I don't make trades. I made one trade in my whole entire fantasy football career, and it bit me in the ass. And I believe that me and Paul made a trade, but that was just draft picks earlier before we even picked players on our team this year. So that I'm not counting that as a trade. That's not a trade.
That was the Eddie Belichick.
That's more of a that's more of a behind the scenes. Trying to make moves on my own for my own drafting abilities. That's not trading players. That's nothing like that. So
worked out for you. You got Dalvin Cook. I
did get Dalvin Cook, and so far I'm satisfied with that. But I don't know. I think it's hard to make. Obviously, if you're one of your players, especially a big player like Lev Bell, who's your number 2 running back, if he gets injured and you don't really have a backup like RB3,
feel the burn over here. E.
What are you going to do but try to make a trade? You're going to have to give up someone decent to get a running back too. Like that's the only way I would have to try to make a trade right now after week 1, after seeing 1 week. It's not a big sample size. Unless I had a couple injuries or maybe just one injury where I don't have a good backup, then I would try to, maybe make some trades. But I don't have any takeaway for this right now after week 1.
Yeah, no, and here's the thing. Like Eddie said, he was dogging me pretty heavy there in his little snippet. But I have Lev Bell, Marlon Mack, and Duke Johnson. We're all on my roster this week. Marlon Mack's out for the season. Lev Bell's on IR, and Duke Johnson's injured. Obviously didn't show out much, even when he did play. But Smoke, what do you have here? What are you going to trade for or away after week 1? And again, one of our segments in the past was the panic button. And we also had the dum-dum. We don't want you to be that, but let us know. What are you trying to do here after week 1?
So my trade away guy is if I have Sammy Watkins on my team. So Sammy Watkins is like I jokingly said James M. Was our Sammy Watkins of our league. It's basically just this. Sammy Watkins is great for week 1. Maybe he good for week 2. But on a high-powered offense, you feel like you want a share of anybody on that team. And Sammy Watkins came out huge. He had 9 targets, 7 catches, 82 yards and a touchdown. But everybody remembers 2019 Sammy Watkins too, right? He had, 9 catches, 198 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Do you guys want to know how many touchdowns Sammy Watkins finished 2019 with? The answer is 3. The same 3 that he started week 1 with. I'm not sold on Sammy Watkins in that offense, and I'm telling you right now, if I have him on my team, I am trying to deal him quick. And just some food for thought for people that I'm interested in. I'm looking at my league, and I'm looking at some of the top 20 guys that just didn't finish very, very well in certain positions. And I'm going out there and I'll try to deal Sammy Watkins right now straight up for Odell Beckham. I'm telling you right now, the guy that has Odell Beckham hates him. He wants to get rid of him. He'll trade that. He'll make that trade. I'll take Odell Beckham all day long for Sammy Watkins. Make that trade.
Well, I think anybody would take Odell Beckham for Sammy Watkins, right?
I think if you find a person that has Odell right now, they'll take Sammy Watkins in his place. He's on a high-powered offense, and Odell hasn't done anything in a year and 1 game. And
I think you might find like 2 out of 10 people that would take that trade.
Odell didn't look good this week.
Allen Robinson, another guy that I'd probably try to make a move for. There's guys out there right now that just they underperformed, and I think you can find people that are willing to buy into that high-powered Kansas City offense and the Sammy Watkins week 1 theory.
Speaking of moves, I got to make a bowel movement. I'll probably see you guys next week.
See.
Wow. That was a quick cutout.
So, one thing I'll say there, Smoke, is I'm not if I'm a Mecole Hardman owner there, you look, he was like number 5 in targets on that squad. That would be a guy that was kind of drafted high that I would think about getting rid of, but he's not on my list. The one guy, again, I'm stealing off of Eddie's comments earlier.
Mecole Hardman back up. Mecole Hardman was what?
Like number 5 on target share.
This week 1?
Yeah.
He had 1 target.
He was in like number 5 on their team.
Okay. So let me finish.
I'm saying trade him away.
Yeah.
Yeah, get rid of him.
But here's the thing. Like for me,
I understand what you're going to say is there's no value in trading him now. You took a risk on him.
At their floor, right? You don't trade people at their floor unless you're getting something at a ceiling.
I think you could still have a conversation with people and say, listen, because I think that's he's at his floor. I think he's going to be one, maybe 3 touchdowns all year. I think he's going to be a deep threat here and there. I think he's going to have that role the entire season, right? You had Robinson there catching balls. You have Kelsey catching balls. You have Sammy Watkins looking good. And obviously Tyreek Hill there, who's their main go-to guy, obviously after Kelsey. But I think Mecole Hardman is – right now he still has some name value and some – hey, he was – look at where his ADP was.
What name value do he has? He did nothing last year. He's done nothing so far in week 1. Like my thing is this. You trade people – that are coming off a huge week that you don't project them to have big weeks, right? Or big years.
I get it. I get that. I'm not disagreeing with you on that part of it, but I'm also saying there's also guys that were drafted in like rounds 8 and 9 that showed what they're going to actually do all year. Like you said, Mecole Hardman last year, he was okay, showed as a rookie that he has potential in the league to do things, but then over the offseason, there's a lot of talk about this guy, how he's going to be, potential if Tyreek Hill gets in trouble or gets hurt because he's had some soft tissue injuries as well, that he might take over that lead role. But obviously you saw week 1 that isn't the play that he's going to have there in Kansas City. So I think you just play off his draft value at this point because you're fresh off your drafts. This guy, you could probably go get, somebody, even if it's like a backup, a Tariq Cohen, maybe you could trade for or something at this point. And then, because he's going to just keep going down and down, people's eyes going forward.
I bet you there's not a chance you can get a Tariq Cohen for him. Not a chance. Tariq Cohen gets more targets and more catches than a wide receiver.
Tariq Cohen had 2 targets last week.
That's more targets than Mecole Hardman got with Mahomes.
Hey, listen, I'm saying he isn't even my guy, so I don't want to get too much into that. My guy's same guy Eddie had his stock falling is Saquon Barkley. You look at his numbers again, and I'm not going to get too much into it, but like Eddie said, 15 carries for 6 yards, terrible O-line. You look at who they play this year. They play the AFC North with Baltimore, Pittsburgh. They play the Cleveland Browns. Then they play the NFC West with the Cardinals, Seattle, Rams, and 49ers. And then the other 2 non-divisional matchups, they're playing the Bears and Tampa Bay. 68% of the teams they play are in the top 15 are the top 50% defenses in the NFL. 38% of the teams they play are in the top 10 defenses in the NFL. I think Saquon Barkley is going to be a boomer bust. He's going to have his big weeks, but I think he's going to have more down weeks than not. One big thing you always talk about, Smoke, is finishing as a top 12 running back, RB1 every week. You're drafting this guy to be RB1, top 10% of that RB1. And unfortunately, I think Saquon's going to be outside that top 12 more than he's in top 2 this entire season. So that's what we have for the trade aways.
Can I jump in? I actually, because it's not very often that I can actually agree with you on things. You and I always seem to have the other side of the spectrum, but I 100% agree with you on Saquon Barkley. I personally own him in one of my leagues. I was the number 2 pick, took him in a PPR, full PPR league. try to make a trade for him today. Made an offer out there to somebody where I offered Saquon and Odell Beckham for Jonathan Taylor and Devontae Adams. They rejected it. And that goes to say a lot, right? You can't even get, and I'm doing exactly what I said not to do, which is you're trying to sell a guy after a bad week. You can't sell a guy after a bad week. You got to wait for a good week, and then you got to prey on those people that are vulnerable to the one-hit wonders in your league. And that's I got to wait for Saquon to have a good week, but I'm on board with you. I am trying to dump him. That offensive line's terrible. He proved it last year. He was up and down like an EKG, and you can't trust him as a top 3 running back in this league with that team. His talent level, he's phenomenal. I won't take anything away from his talent level. And most teams he'd be ridiculous, but not on that team.
So here's one thing I'll rebut against your statement is you can't trade away people on their off weeks. Is you try to trade away for a guy that went off like 14 receptions, 150 some yards and 2 touchdowns, monster week. And another guy where his situation just got even better with Marlon Mack going down for the season and Jonathan Taylor, right? Like you're trying to go for 2 guys that had good weeks, great weeks, and obviously just looking to get better going forward. You see the eye of the tiger coming out of Aaron Rodgers this year. I don't know if it's the spike game or if it's something different in that offensive game plan, but he looks phenomenal. That's another guy I'd go trade for. Again, Paulie would say, don't go do it now, but I think he's going to carry this throughout the season. He's got that chip on his shoulder. He's going to be an absolute animal going forward, and I think he's going to force feed Devontae Adams. I think those two are going to be battling along with Russ Wilson for MVP of the league. Just my opinions, obviously, but that's my take on what's going forward. So do you guys have anything else you want to share for tonight? Smoke? Cavi, you're on mute.
Cavi's on mute, but I'll finish with this. It's week 1. For all the listeners out there, do not panic. Do not go and just start trading your team away. Do not go and just start picking up random guys thinking because after week 1 they had a big breakout game that it's going to last. Look back last year. Week 1 was a big week for a lot of people like Sammy Watkins that didn't finish the year anywhere in a starting lineup. Don't panic. Wait for at least a week or 2 before you start panicking.
Let me ask you this, Smoke, real quick. Give me your top 3 waiver wire pickups this week.
I'm going to go Nyheim Hines is probably my number 1 pickup. I'll throw Peyton Barber in there because I think, Washington, he gets the goal line carries. I'll throw Benny Snell in there. You talked about him earlier is another big pickup. I think Goddard is a great tight end pickup. And from a wide receiver, deep sleeper, what's the I just lost it. Sorry, I apologize. But what's the receiver from who's the third receiver in New Orleans behind Emmanuel Sanders? He's a second-year player. God, I can't think of it now. Shoot.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll say it before the end of the show. Go to Cavi. Dang it.
You want to get Scotty Miller. I agree with Goddard 100%. I think that's a big pickup. But also, I think it's also a dangerous one because that's a lot of mouths to feed in an offense that's going to be scrambling for their lives the rest of the season because they're playing like rugby players as their starting offensive lineman now. But Scotty Miller down in Tampa Bay, I think, is going to be the new Edelman in that offense. I mean, you're looking already, Brady. I mean, unfortunately for me, he didn't even look Mike Evans' way, but he was, going back to his Edelman days and using Scotty Miller as his Edelman. So I think that's going to be that's going to kind of be the way that season goes down there. So if you can get him, and he should be available in every league. Who the hell heard of him before then? I will go after him.
So I'm going to be honest. I'm not going to share any of my waiver wire requests because like they all said tonight is I am hurting at running back and it is a struggle. So I have literally 19 waiver claims in every which way you could think about it. I have parlays, I have trifectas, I have supers laying down on these players, and I'm not going to let a cat out of the bag tonight. So that's what we have for you tonight.
Traequan Smith was the guy.
Traequan Smith. Yeah, he was solid last year.
He's the guy that I'd be thinking about in New Orleans. If Emmanuel Sanders is their number 1, Traequan is their number 2 now with Michael Thomas being out for a couple weeks.
Yeah. So
since I have waiver priority, I'm going to switch it from who I was going to pick up and make sure I pick up a running back now, so that Tommy can take a look at the trade I just sent him and hopefully accept it.
I'll think about it.
Greatest.
So that's what we have for you guys tonight. We appreciate you listening. You can listen to us on YouTube. We'll send it out on Facebook, Twitter. We're also on SoundCloud, iTunes. Give us a shout. Visit our page at pointaftershow.com. We'll be all over Reddit this week trying to push the news again. I'm Tom Lipko. Paul's the FF Advantage, a.k.a. Smoke, a.k.a. the Fantasy Aces, a.k.a. the worst fantasy player in the history of the world. And then we also have Cavi out there, Fantasy Champ. We appreciate everything you guys do for us. Make sure you give it a listen. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And just like Eddie, I'm out. Deuces.